How do we do this? With a lot of participation, every opportunity we get, including forums like this. The partnership has been, since the winter of 2012, recruiting partners and organizing for collaboration. On our steering committee, led by the Greater Buffalo Niagara Regional Transportation Council, our metropolitan planning organization is made up of all of the people who participate in the governance of our transportation infrastructure. It's led by the Niagara Frontier Transportation Authorities as a fiscal agent, and virtually the whole crew that developed the Erie Niagara County Planning Framework came back to the table to say, how do we make that sharper and better? That steering committee works with a local government council open to all 64 municipalities. It works to the private sector council, which is largely organized through the Greater Buffalo Niagara Partnership. And there are working teams in each of the 5 areas that I'd outlined. And then finally, there are these community congresses, of which there are, at this stage, 2. One we just held last Tuesday in Buffalo, and this one. In total, we've got 5 folks, 5 groups asking the question, how good is our current planning framework? We've been 4 answers so far. 1 from the steering committee, 1 from the government council, 1 from the business council, 1 from the first Congress, and today from the second Congress. So that's where we're headed. We need to reflect on the nature of the collaboration and the inclusive nature of the effort. To know where we need to go, we need to know where we are. What do our plans tell us? What does the data tell us? We're just now testing what the plans tell us. Both of those things should give us some guidance about where we are now and where we want to go in the future. This public engagement will proceed with those same kinds of 5 elements: the steering committee, business, government, and the public through the congresses. And within that, through working groups in each of the 5 subject areas with community-based and faith-based organizations, in addition to the crews that are assembled for events like this. These conversations should take us through to the fall of 2014, where you will be no longer asking the broad question, where do we want to go? But you'll be saying, yes, that's what we said, and we agree to it, or no, we don't yet, and here's how it needs to be approved. But that's the sequence of reviews, the conversations to inform where we want to go in a region, reviewing the progress of our plan step by step. Vision, action, and measurement. Charting the course for that roadmap for what we imagine will become a sustainable and prosperous region. Translating the vision and values into goals, prioritizing them, and developing the metrics that measure our success. So, why are we here today? Where we want to go as a region is the question. If we just take the planning framework as it stands, we'll give you a summary of what seems to be in play now. And we'll ask you to say, yep, right on target, or holy smokes, not that way, or everything in between. 160 plus plans read and analyzed. Now, here's what we do. We read, we see the key phrases, we record and organize those phrases 161 times. And then we say, well, so what? Where's the common ground? What are the most important things that come out of those documents? What are the least important things that come out of those documents? And out of that, we've tried to capture in what we call word clouds, sort of big text for big themes, smaller text for smaller themes, a general statement of where those plans would take you if you let them. And then the question is that where we want to go? Is that what we want to do? Now, we've read these documents, we've produced summaries of the documents. Each of those summaries identifies who proffered them, to go to your question. And within that, those summaries are available to be read and reviewed through our web presence. We've coded these for statements of intent, counted the references, and mapped them in the word cloud. It's not the last word by any stretch. We think some of them are literally brand new documents. Some of them are as old as 30 years. So, you got to bring them up to date to some extent. It's a good place, we think, to start the conversation, but not to end it. Highlight where we have differences, identify things that have to be changed, and talk about issues that are just emerging. Point to something that's missing is an important dimension. About 10 core themes have been extracted to date from this review. And one of the things that you'll find interesting is we'll put those themes up, we'll show you these word clouds, and you're going to want to say, I can't talk about that one without understanding its connection to all the rest. What I'm going to say to you is, right, but if that's the response we get, we won't be much smarter about the sequence of things we have to engage. So we're going to be asking you to look at these individually and at the same time acknowledge that they all have to have some relationship to the other to work as a whole system. So just hang on in your head and know that by way of agenda, we'll be talking about each one of these. Economic development as a theme is in almost every one of the documents we've read. The approach to managing growth or prosperity is a core element of most of the documents. How do the transportation systems work are in probably 35 to 40% of these documents as a core issue. Housing in neighborhoods in almost every municipal plan. Farmland and agriculture, stronger in the rural areas, but increasingly of more interest in the urban cores. Energy and climate more recently became visible in some of the plans, not so much in the ones 30 years ago. Natural resources is a big theme across almost all of the plans. Heritage and culture, and who we are in this community and who we want to become is a core theme, tied much to arts and recreation. And finally, the very approach to who's planning, how are they planning, toward what end. How does that work? So organizing the statements by theme. Now, the university requires us, because we're going to ask you some questions, that you agree that you want to play with us. And if you do, fine. And if you don't, that's fine too. But our process tonight involves some clicker polling that we will use to open these conversations. We'll ask you to sort of take a position. That summary sounds right. I want to go there. I'm not so sure. I'd like to see this added to it. I hate that. You get to do that. We'll ask you those questions. You'll nod in and out. Participation in the polling is absolutely voluntary and anonymous. I'm a teacher. I have these tools in my classroom. If you punch it in my classroom, I know who you are. If you punch them here, I don't know who you are. It's completely anonymous in that respect. Participation in the discussion is also voluntary. We'll take notes very carefully on the things you offer. And it doesn't matter whether we love what you say or hate what you say. We'll take the notes. We'll ask you to tell us the most important thing you have to offer, not everything. Because I think there's about 100 people in the room. And if you each tell us everything you know, then we won't be able to get the most important things from most of you. Before we're done today, we should have an opportunity for each of you to get at least one or more of your most important concerns on the table. So it's part of our thinking as we offer back a critique of the current planet base. Oh yes, I got to tell you, you will not be compensated for your participation. And if you choose to push the clicker button, it means you mean to participate. So, sorry about that. The bureaucracy requires us to be that quick. So, let's start out by who's in the room, if we could. We'll just start with that base, get a general sense of it. We're looking for the gender split here. And what you do is you just push the button responding to the answer you want to make. Go as quickly as you can to speed up our process, and we'll get into the conversation quicker. I'd like you to hold until we get to the questions that are tied to the planning base. We're here to review the planning base. The quicker you push, oh, you should look at your clicker. By the way, you can push these buttons as many times as you want. It only records the last one. And then secondly, if you look when you push it, and do this now, if you have a green light on the clicker, your clicker is working. If it doesn't show green, raise your hand and we'll replace your clicker. He's coming around with them, and just swap them out. You push it, you should get green, and it should show up. Otherwise, it's not counted.
Yeah, it doesn't have to point to anything.
Brian, maybe you can help us. What? It turns green when you click it. So just push it again, it turns green. If it doesn't turn green when you click it, raise your hand. We got 2 more up front. Oh. 3 more up front. And then one right behind you. Okay, everybody got green? Everybody's in? 61 people choosing to respond. Let's see how you're made up tonight. Okay, so we have 52% male, 44% female, 3% in the preferring not to answer. So that's the cross-section by way of gender distribution. Then we look to age. What's the cross-section of ages represented in this group? And again, I normally put I don't know or don't remember, but usually up to 75 you're okay, and after that it doesn't matter. If you don't know, push 75. Okay, we're at 58 plus and counting. I'm going to move ahead. Wow, that's very interesting. That's a very nice cross-section of age for this conversation. And I think we're going to have to get out on that. It's also that we're doing more and more with trying to figure out how to get this into the schools and work with the school children to get a broader cross-section.
Robert?
I'm going to entertain a question, but briefly, please.
Yeah, I beg your pardon. I was at your last meeting.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you and Hal, of course, for putting this together and bringing this fine group of people together from the community. I sat through your last meeting, and there was a lot of questions and concerns that had specifically to do with this next part of your presentation. And I think that it would lend a lot of insight to what you're about to present. And I was wondering if I can ask these fine people, or your permission to maybe comment a little bit about what they're about to embark on.
I'm going to tell them about that in just a second. Is that what you mean?
Not exactly, but I was hoping that you might give me the opportunity to speak with these people if they would find that okay. It would take 90 seconds, I'm sure. You don't look at it.
We'll find 90 seconds for you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
What did he ask?
He's asking for 90 seconds of our time. So, how old are you? You got the range. This is a question that's equally important. It helps aim our outreach to make sure that we're touching the cross-section of publics that we presumably are part of, that make up our community. And here it's what's the racial or ethnicity breakdown. I'm gonna click it now. So if we were to array alongside this what our community really looks like, we would say that's not us. That's not us. So the outreach efforts, the connection efforts that get us to a broader range of constituencies in terms of race and ethnicity are important. And then finally, and this one's impossible, some of you are 5 things on this list. So pick the one that you would most like to use as a descriptor for yourself, or say other, whichever you prefer best. But we're trying to get a sense of who we're talking to in broad strokes. The language here, CBO or NGO, is community-based organization or non-governmental organization, where you actually run a private not-for-profit or are participating as a representative from a community-based or faith-based organization. Non-governmental. Okay, I'm going to go ahead then. So again, most of you are here as concerned citizens. We have a small percentage of business owners, but we have a business council that we also meet with, so their representation is pretty well addressed. We have a very strong representation in community-based and non-governmental organizations. Often these are special interests of one kind or another. We have public officials at 10% of our audience tonight. In one form or another they're representing. And part of the dynamic here is to recognize that in both this category and this category we have additional committees working. Public officials, students, and observers. What are some examples of other that we should speak to? Anybody want to tell us what their other is? Yes, sir. Historian, a distinguished class. Frank.
Regional promotion of an event to involve and promote outdoor athletic recreation, health, fitness, arts, and cultural history in the region.
Thank you, Thomas. Finally, where are you coming from? When we did this in, as you would guess, in the Buffalo area, we had a pretty strong core of Buffalo and the surrounding suburbs. Now we're here in Niagara County looking for hopefully a good distribution. Thank you, by the way, for coming out for snow. Say it again.
Can you define some of that as the first ring?
Yeah, so if you're in the core city like Lockport or Niagara Falls, then you're city of Niagara Falls, that's it. If you're in the cities that are adjacent to it, your first ring suburb. If you're in a city beyond that, your second ring suburb or outer ring. Village and rural, if you self-define yourself as in a village, tell us. This is just give us a general idea. You did when you came in, also give us sort of a locational clue so we have an image of where you're from already captured on the map that you did when you came in. Okay? So many of you are working or living in urban centers, first ring, and then out in the perimeter and in the village world. Fewer are outwardly rural in our mix right now. Again, this helps aim us in our future discussions. And finally, where do you call home? What county? So 27% in Erie, 66% in Niagara, 7% someplace else. What are some of the someplace else's outside the two-county region? Not telling. Okay. So this is where I believe you would like 90 minutes, 90 seconds, but let me just introduce this again. What we want to do is hold up a mirror and say, we've read plans from people who presume to represent you. 30 years of them, many of them more recent. They've told us about these kinds of 10 theme areas, and they've described ways those theme areas are connected in some fashion. We've tried to record and map that for you to give you a general sense of it, and then we've tried to write a sort of summary statement. Think about that as a vision statement about each one. And what we're testing is the vision derived from the current plan the vision you want to pursue? And you're gonna have some comments to offer. We're going to take about 5 or 6 minutes per question, and we're going to take rapid fire from the floor, things you'd like to see change to get to a point of comfort with the statement, or not. You won't agree. Things will come from left field and right field, and then we'll know where there's controversy associated with each statement. There's a broad concern or critique that says, should we be doing this kind of planning at all? And that's one point of view. There's another that says, in order to move forward, we have to do this kind of planning. And that's also a point of view we have to respect. And so the goal here is to respect all the points of views that are offered. Don't dominate the mic. And we'll get as much information about your planning framework as we can from you as a place to start. Go. Get a mic back there, please. This gentleman joined us in the last session. He gave us, I think, a strong series of points of view, but I think structurally contests the process.
I want to thank you again, Hal. I want to thank you again as well for bringing all these fine people together. I wanted to address everybody here today because I had the pleasure of being part of the first meeting that was done on this past Tuesday.
Sir, could you identify yourself?
And do you have are you have an affiliation or?
No, I have no affiliation with any political group. I have no affiliation with any type of activist group. And I have no affiliation with anybody in this room.
Where are you from?
Colleagues, please allow him his 90 seconds.
Talk louder, okay?
And speak right into the mic.
Sure, sure. We didn't have an opportunity, I didn't have an opportunity to be able to express some of my points of view in the last meeting. So I wanted to come forth today and help maybe you folks understand a little bit about what some of my concerns were. What you're going to engage in today, this particular type of presentation, is called the Delphi method. And what's important to understand about the Delphi method is that it was developed and designed to give the illusion that we are all participating and we're all part of this process. Now, I don't want anybody to think for a moment that anybody in this room is here to take you down the wrong road or give you bad information. That's not the case. These people are here to do a job, and they're trying to do the best that they can under the circumstances and those conditions. But it's important to know that the questions, the way they're going to be presented to you as we move forward, are going to be very vague. They're going to be very hard to find documentation, such as some of the statistics you were provided. There was no references at all to where any of those statistics or numbers came from. It's very important to know that these items that you're going to be seeing right now are going to be very unidentifiable in terms of discussing what they're about. And there will not be an opportunity this evening for you to be able to get into the details of those things, which are very important to each and every one of you here today. So I want you to know also, which you probably already know, is $2 million has been given to this particular project from taxpayer dollars. And also, the majority of that money was created by deficit spending, which means that taxpayers are on the hook for all of that money with accrued interest. And this money was given to private individuals, unelected officials, to do with it what they feel they'll need to do with that money. And here, we are supposed to have the forum to give our participation in that. My concern is, I'm not sure that we the people will have that participation. So all I'm asking everybody here today is, with respect to everybody, the presenters and everybody else, is that we need to look for conscious solutions to collectivist problems. And I want everybody here just to think for themselves and see what resonates with you, and then make your decisions from there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A couple of things to point out, and again, much appreciated.
Thank you.
The representation of your metropolitan planning organization that steers this is in fact elected officials. So your elected officials are represented throughout this process, both in the legislative council and in the work of the NPO director. So we do have strong legislative participation. The second one is, he's right, this is a general start to the process meant to get value statements on the table. And value statements are tough to pin down. But we are eager to hear the values you want us to start with in this conversation. The last thing is on data. There you touch a point that's mine. I live in the university. I live to tell the truth. The data that we offer is all available and documented, and we'll have it on your website, and you can take it apart any way you like. We welcome it. In fact, the world we're in this project is that critique is a gift. You're here on a Saturday gifting your time. We think your critique is precisely what we need. And if we're doing the data wrong, we need that too. The Delphi is not the only method we're employing throughout this process. You will see in the work groups, the study efforts associated with whatever data comes will bring you the best that science and social science has to offer. But again, thank you very much for that. Let me now just suggest that in this field, we are trying to understand what in the world 163 plans say to us. And we start with one that surfaces frequently at the top of the stack of interest in our municipality. We're going to take about 5 minutes per question, so to get your clicks in quick. The questions turn out not to be so complicated, but the plans do. There's 163 of them. They're all over the map. But there's no doubt that they're all interested in development of some kind, that they're looking at tourism and industry and the economy. And then in relationship to that, there's job growth and job creation, the education base that supports it. There's sector interests in life sciences and professional services, advanced manufacturing. Some of these plans are really looking at how to attract. Others are much more focused on retaining what we've got. All of that in the broad theme statement of economic development. Reading all of that took us to say, well, how would you say it in a sentence? Just to get, again, it's vague, but how would you say it in a sentence? And does the sentence promote a response that helps us say it in a smarter sentence? Paint the target more clearly. That's the exercise we're in as a start, not the only method. And so we say, in effect, reading all those plans, you can walk away and say the elevator speech is simple. Create a more competitive and prosperous 21st century regional economy. Implicit in that, you can't keep doing what you've always been doing. Implicit in that is prosperous and competitive compared to where we are today and where we have been since the time before those plans were crafted. So it's a pretty general statement. It's where I want to go. You know, it's mostly on the mark, but if I was thinking about economy, I'd go someplace else. Where? It's partly right, partly wrong. Boy, it misses the mark. It totally misses the mark. If you've got some other opinion or not sure, we'll be asking. And please mark your response. We'll use it for the conversation.
You're assuming that we've done this, create it more competitive?
No, I am assuming only that that's what their planning framework says. We think that's if you look at all the things in that word cloud, that's say it in a sentence, sort of like this. And then this sentence is going to resonate with you as, yeah, that's what I want for economic development. Or, you know what, if I'm really concentrating on economic development, those words don't capture it for me. I want to hear something about instead. So, with that said, we'll take a look at where you are. And we see that about 18% of you think that sentence captures where you want to go. 38 plus 16 plus 4 plus some others really think there's quite a distance between what that statement says and where you want to go. So this is where you tell us and we'll write it down. Go.
I'm confused about the whole sustainability that is in the heading of all of this. And what do you mean by sustainability, and where is sustainability in that statement? I think of, when I hear sustainability, and that's what drew me here, I think of environmental sustainability. And I'm not sure that's what you're talking about.
What I'd like you to do is note two things. One is both the Q&A, some definition of sustainability, and a few others are provided in a kind of frequently asked questions sheet. But more to the point, several of the issues here will speak directly to sustainability. There were 10, remember, we're just looking at the first one. And we're trying to capture the spirit of not what we said, but what we read from the plans you produced about that. I'm recording here that you would want to see this in the context of sustainability. I get it. Thank you. Yes?
Regarding the 160 plans, that there should be a common denominator that diagonalizes across all those 160 plans. That's what you're looking for, is to come out of these meetings.
If you could imagine a goal that could be stated in one sentence for all 10, you're right, Thomas. Thank you. Anybody else? In the back, in the corner. Thank you.
Yeah, I put not sure because, you know, it all depends on how you define a regional economy. Free market people would describe an economy as individuals being able to spend their own money as they see fit. The Keynesian model, you know, the top-down tax and spend and deficits don't matter, is how they would define it. So I guess it depends how we proceed forward, if we're going to get back to free market economics or if we're going to allow regional governments to plan our lives for us.
Here's where I'd like you to go, folks. Thank you. I'd like you to go as assertions. I would like to see this address free market economies as a definition for economy. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Thank you. Who else? Yes, sir.
Thanks. I like this a lot. It's hard not to want a competitive or prosperous 21st century economy. So I think that I put mostly on the mark. I would just add a clarification of for whom. I think a lot of economic development benefits a few, and I would like to see maybe for all or for working families.
So free market for whom, a much more diverse representation of who benefits. Right here, we got a mic. He's running. He can move faster than that. I know he can.
Are you basing that question on what you read in those different plans?
Yes, we are.
They say that the past is prologue. The one thing that I saw missing in the data that you put out was employment data in terms of quality and quantity, journey to work, these things that are available certainly over the period of time and will let us understand where we've been as a guide and base for where we're going.
So if we're talking about looking forward, build it on a real data base on that, and we agree with you completely. Yes, sir.
Nobody's ever accused me of being shy. Markers for success.
Market performance,
It's
market for success.
the guy who invented cottage cheese, how did he know when he was done?
Good, good.
We need something to tell us that we've reached our goal or we need to set a new goal.
And these three have already given us three such things. Give me the database in the past, let me understand how it plays out in the free market, let me understand how it distributes across the needs of everyone. Fair enough? Thank you. One here. He's coming.
In my community, first of all, I'd like to bring up citizen participation. From my own experience and from what I do with other people, when my municipality was doing their plan, it was not a true citizen involvement.
Well,
Very, very important. And it was so, in fact, I will not say which it was, but planning commission member had said to me when I was in the grocery store, when they did the current one, they were not to participate. This is so unacceptable.
So, number one, we're going to put the participation base up front. You'll find that the 10th question we're going to get to, it's all about exactly that, connected to everything.
Mandated by the federal government.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you very much. We got the top of the stack here, all the way in the back, please.
Just a quick question about these slides that were taken based on our input. Are those being cataloged?
Yes.
And will they be used
They'll all on the web. We'll look at this. As you might guess, we've done this now 4 times. We're doing it a 5th. We're looking across the whole spectrum of observations.
Will they be used in future type of presentations to show and promote a common goal and a common theme based on everybody here and across the board?
They will be used to inform next steps in the process that include a database description of where we are compared to your expression of where you think you'd like to go and where you have said you want to go, according to some better than other plans that have participation embedded in them.
I didn't say it so well before, but that was one of my main concerns, because if folks look at the questions that are coming up on board, they're so broad-based, they're very unidentifiable, and they mean different things to different people. And if these numbers, as you say, are being used to promote a program...
No. You said promote. I didn't say promote. And thank you.
I stand corrected if I was incorrect.
Thank you.
But that's my concern.
Yeah, the point is not to promote. The point is, what do the values in the existing plan say? What do you say today? And what does the data say? And how does all of that, together with work group conversations, discussions, maybe additional research, take us to a direction we can really, as you said, consensually get to?
But we've accepted the money, correct? The $2 million is already been accepted?
That's fair.
Professor Shipley?
Yes.
What I did, some years back, not that long ago, when...
Thank you, by the way, for professor. I liked it. I am, yes. I'm a dean. Thank you. Okay.
You're highly thought of. Thanks for your good work. The point is, I remember, and I was watching it, a relative of mine lives in Niagara County, but she they had to move to North Carolina in order for her husband to have his, continue his job. In Forsyth County, Winston-Salem, when they were doing their master plan in the large county like ours, they had an ongoing website where people were participating. It wasn't a once a year or 4 or 5 within 2 years. It was an ongoing. I want to see that here.
You're on target. We have one. It is open now and will be interactive throughout the process. Thank you. And again, bring it back when we get to participation. Frank, I'm going to comment on the
quickly on the internet. There are regional plans that are being developed throughout the country.
Yep.
And this one can emulate some of the others, but basically it's hydrogeographically driven.
Thank you for Thomas. Whatever he just said, yes, we have a website, yes, it's interactive and participatory, and will be open throughout, and everyone will have an opportunity to comment on these things in the same way. And each stage, it will get sharper and sharper, and you'll be able to comment.
It advertises more often.
Yep, okay. Get the word out, and you can help us get the word out. Now, smart growth is the next big theme, remembering it's connected to everything else. But it's surfaced, particularly in the last 10 to 15 years. You saw more and more of these plans using this terminology. And what did they mean? Well, they were looking at how we use existing infrastructure or develop new infrastructure. They were interested in how we maintain those infrastructures we produce. They were looking at ways to make vital urban centers, even in the most small rural communities, so that they had a good local walkable community in that base. There was a lot of work on the brownfields of our communities, the industrial legacies of our communities, and where they're going to waste and how best to clean them up. Vacant land, extended infrastructure. A host of things, looking at strip retail development and whether that's the way we want to live in the future or not. How do you think about all of those things as a bundle surfaced, and we tried to get that into a sentence. It was tough. But the sentence we derived, again, trying to get the elevator speech, build on existing infrastructure and invest in developed areas to lower costs, improve efficiency, and enhance quality of life. Now, again, that's what we thought we heard those statements saying in those plans. Tell us what you think. I'm going to go. 1, 2, wait for it. He says, wait for it. This is a guy, an hour from now, is going to be saying you went too slow. Okay? I just want you to know that wait for it, but okay, 56, we're done. All right, so a few more of you are a little more comfortable with this general statement. What does it take to move these folks into comfort? What does this have to reflect that's not there? I already know where you're going. Smart growth is sustainability, by the way, but that's a whole other question.
Well, but it doesn't say it. It should
Okay.
be in there.
All right. Thank you.
And I don't think what you have included is home rule preservation and social engineering.
Home rule, preservation, social engineering. How do you want to? Those are so consistent with home rule.
Yes.
And
That is independent, individual, citizen vote and preservation of our sovereignty.
okay.
Home rule preservation as under
Oh,
law.
home rule preservation is a single phrase. Thank you.
Yes,
That helps.
preservation of
Good.
our home rule.
And the last phrase was then sovereignty. Got it. In the back.
Hi. As far as what I'm seeing on this question here, it seems to me like what's going to happen is we're going to get something of an artificial development in the fact that this is going to be planned somewhere, and it's not going to be something that happens naturally, like the gentleman was saying about free market capitalism, okay? So basically what we're being asked to do here is submit whatever our answers are that go to a board who's going to make these decisions and spend our taxpayer money the way, who says, that we say? Because
Give us an affirmative statement to fix
Okay.
it. You want it to be, you want it developed, build on existing infrastructure in accordance with the dictates of free market.
well, basically, what's happening here is the questions that were being asked, you showed up all the words on the page here, okay? Now,
This is what your documents tell us.
the questions that the answers that you were given were channeled to be those answers.
I think
So,
I think what he's saying is that I think every slide that we're going to see from this point forward in the past are all going to be in the number 1 and the number 2.
if you ask somebody what is your major concern, of course they're going to say, well, I want to be healthy and prosper, okay? So you go and put be healthy and prosper up there, all right? Well, the question is kind of gearing your answer. And so far, when I was at a presentation previously, the same questions were answered. There was one question that was not answered, was not asked, and that is, does everybody here want to move forward with this Agenda 21? That's what it is, an agenda for the 21st century. Because I've done my research, sir, and where this is headed, when it talks about sustainability, it's not sustainable for you and I. What happens is, well, housing is an issue, and transportation is an issue. You know what solves those? Get us all in one big apartment complex. Get us all on Department of Transportation Vehicles by NFTA, where they say what goes. They want the cars off the road. They want the single houses gone. And I know it's not you, sir, okay? And I know it's not all the facilitators here. Like this gentleman said, you guys are doing your job, okay? But where these answers go are to people who really don't care about you, or me, or even the people facilitating here. Now, one more point I'd like to make, and I'll shut up for a while, is you say this is all anonymous, yet I had to sign in to come here. I had to give my name, I had to give my email address, whatever I had to do, okay? I was given something to mark these answers down that has a number on the back of it, okay? So how honest is this whole concept here that you're doing?
We have no track back to you, and if you can cross your name off the list, sir. This is meant to be an open forum. Thank you for your
Why
point of
then,
view.
if
Thank
it's
you
meant
for
to
your
be
point of
an
view.
open forum, do we have to sign in with our names?
Thank you for your point of view. Take your name off.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I'm going to move to the next unless there's something else in smart growth you want to get in the mix. We got one here that wasn't in the section.
One thing that could fix these questions is if at the end of the sentence that you have, I don't need like if at the end of the sentence you put if voted on by the public at large. Instead
Okay,
of
so
being dictated
again,
by a committee.
let's if you go all the way back around, remember there's 10 of these we're looking at. The 10th one, and they're all connected, each to the other. One of them is about the public participation process, and
No,
it's
I mean
democratic.
by a public election, by voting at the
Got
polls.
it. That's what participation means to me. It's democracy.
But this is not. This is a microcosm.
I understand that. We got to start somewhere. We start the conversation. Think of it as a town hall.
Why do we have to start anywhere?
Okay, so I'm
That's a
just
point
gonna,
of view. Thank you. And we'll record it. Why do we have to start anywhere? Go, sir.
I'm going to practice my self-democracy here by saying, interjecting my piece. Quickly, one thing would be the developed areas. I would maybe want to see that as high density, perhaps, because there are some high density areas that have been underdeveloped over the years. So if we're looking at just developed areas, we might miss a large section of high density areas that could be developed.
Point taken. Thank you very much. This young lady wanted to know.
I think it is communitarianism.
Communitarianism.
Yep.
Okay. Recorded. Thank you. Yes, sir.
I would include in that excluding private property.
Excluding.
Only public property.
I'll focus on on private property. All the way in the back.
I said partly right and partly wrong because we're in the city of Niagara Falls, which would like to remove the infrastructure in the form of the Robert Moses Parkway on the south side, in addition to the town of Lewiston, which would not like to see the federal government invest in developing areas currently used for radioactive waste that has been quote-unquote temporarily stored here since 1942. We like investment to remove and undevelop that area and return it to its former agricultural use.
So in some cases, the public infrastructure is in the wrong place and does violence to us, is the statement I'm hearing you push on. Thank you. I think these are all nuances that push this, including those that would take them off the table entirely. So thank you all. Let's move to the next one. And here, transportation. Again, your plans speak to transportation. To the most part, this is a public infrastructure question in one form or another. We got a lot of different varieties of concern about this in the documents we read. Transportation writ large, bicycle, pedestrian transit, multiple modes of support for this transit is on the theme. How do motorists function well and efficiently in our system? Implicit in some of that is the idea of connectivity and traffic calming. The life safety of some of our streets are part of that mix. What's the role of passenger rail and how is it supported? Freight rail, again, how is it supported? These are public infrastructure questions and private citizen choices, all embedded in this mix. So again, trying to find the broad themes embedded in it, a broader set of transportation options seem to be implied in the plans your municipalities have put forward. Options to improve access to jobs and services, promote energy efficiency and safety. That's the elevator speech. What do you think? Close enough. Going once, twice. Interesting. So now we're looking at a much larger percentage than we've seen so far that think that's a reasonable summation and consistent with your values. Some would be much more comfortable, some more comfortable, a little more comfortable with some change to that general statement. How would you push this approach? You know, you get first in. Let's see if there's some other folks who haven't talked yet, and I'll come back to you. Thanks.
I think if you rephrase this right now and just said how many would like to get rid of their cars in the next year, I don't know if you'd get that top number. Ask it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That's where we're headed.
So if it's about getting rid of your car, we're in trouble.
Yeah,
is your
that's what we're worried about.
Okay. Again, I'm looking at hands I've seen before. If the rest of you can add value to this statement, that's great. Otherwise, I'm going back to the hands we've seen before. Anybody else in? If you're quiet, you can understand that how the tone of this takes.
So I think the thing about it is that it is important to have broad transportation, but if we can have good quality jobs in like a city environment or closer in to prevent that sprawl, then having the transportation isn't as much of an issue as having jobs that pay living wage.
So transportation isn't independent from the public infrastructures that support decisions to build in one place or another. Right. If I misstate when I do this, you need to challenge me, but I think that's where you were going with that. Sounds right.
I think maybe we need some kind of language around underserved populations. You know, not everybody owns a car, can afford a car.
That's the diversity piece back again with a different twist. Thank you very much. All the way in the back and this young lady. And then we're going to move on.
I think a lot of today's agenda proceeds forward on sort of the assumption that climate change is real, or you know, CO2-driven global warming is real. So I mean, like this gentleman said before, you know, let's scrap this and start from, you know, point zero, where we can have an open debate on some of the inconsistencies of Al Gore's video and some of the scientists who disagree with climate change. I want them heard, and not you know, for them to be ridiculed as.
You'll have an opportunity to come at climate change directly, because it's one of the categories. Here we're in transportation, but we've made a note of what you just said. Thank you. And yes.
I'd like to see added unencumbered transportation and preservation of rural roads, especially on the farms.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move on. Housing and neighborhoods. Again, Your planning base across the two regions says, wow, housing is in trouble. You saw the stats. These are real stats on vacant housing and beyond that, vacant lots in our neighborhoods. Housing in neighborhoods. A big family of issues, housing for sure, but always, almost always in the context of the neighborhoods that support that. It's not just about houses, it's about all of them. The public services that are expected, whether they're schools, water, sewer, roads, all of the public services that either make that a good place to live or not, are part of also the planning work that's been done across the region. How much and what kind of rental property versus home ownership, an individual choice or a collective choice, where does that play out in terms of the way municipalities govern their land use? Public safety, retailing, walkable, that comes up again. The whole idea of what a Main Street and quality of life is like, the range of choices, independent and otherwise. And out of this, we tried to get to a kind of a central tendency in the discussion. We heard in these planning documents a fair amount of pressure from people living somewhere that they want to preserve the history and character of the place they're in and preserve their housing stock. We also heard a call to foster neighborhoods that are great places that are safe, well-served, and distinctive from the standpoint of the history of place and circumstance that they grew up in. So you get a whole kind of cadre of issues embedded in one sentence here to try and capture it. Let's see how you feel about this statement. These are what I like to refer to as clinker moments. You're thinking about how to sharpen this statement. You're making your observations clearer. And you know that when we look at the chart, I'm going to say, why do you think that way? And then you're going to offer us good advice, right? 52 plus, 55, we're going. Okay, a little less comfort with this one. What do we got to do to get to a position where we can frame a statement that's consistent with your values?
It also needs to include that preserves the individual's property rights.
Individual property rights, thank you.
I'm stuck on the word preserve, but I don't have a better one yet. Too often I've seen preserve become protect at all costs.
What do we mean by preserve as a clear thing? Maybe there's another or better word.
How about rehab?
Or rehabilitate. Okay.
Conserve.
Conserve.
Lend only to people who can afford to pay for a home.
Lend only to people who can afford to pay.
So I would just build on what this gentleman said, that this should include some kind of cost-benefit analysis in the long run of preserving what is versus potentially using the land differently. There are many studies that show that if there's total preservation, it creates too many other long-term problems.
Cost to benefit. Thank you. These are all helpful. All the way in the back.
Yes, our housing market is basically developer-driven based on profit return. And I think it's at the expense of social issues. So I think we may need a strategic plan for housing throughout the area.
Okay.
Code enforcement.
Code enforcement.
Very important. Quality of life, sense of place. We had it in the Falls, Buffalo, North Tonawanda, Oliver Street, and it's disintegrating.
Public responsibility to maintain public safety through
Absolutely.
code enforcement.
Quality of life.
It's the law. Thank you. Okay. Can we move? One more?
One of the things that concerns me as we go through this process is we're talking about integrating multiple plans and multiple communities. We should be also looking at the integration of neighborhood, jobs, transportation, because they're all interrelated. And the disintegration that occurs, or the foundation for it, may depend on any one of these variables.
Perfect. I take 2 points out of that. The first one is one size doesn't fit all. So we integrate where we can and should and want to, and we maintain separate individual identities relative to the neighborhoods and communities that we're working with. And then secondly, the point we started with, which is all of these things have interconnections. They're all related.
I have a question. So what he just said, taking off of what he said, having everything else
sort of together in a community. Is this sort of like in China with Foxconn, how the people in China, when they work for Apple, they live in a high rise, and then they work down below, putting together Apple products, and then when they're overly exerted, then they sort of jump off the building?
You got 5 sentences there when all you want to say is not like China. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's go to agriculture and food. Now, in the rural communities, this has been part of municipal plans forever. The whole state farmland protection, all of that dynamic is part of our public law infrastructure. But we see more and more interest in a sustainable food supply and a resilient community that can feed itself. And more interest is surfacing in the plans that many of your communities have proffered. So in agriculture and food, farmland and agriculture and rural character all surface in a really strong way. And then related to that, the quality of our soils, what constitutes a good approach to agritourism, what are these agri-districts and how best to support the right to farm, what's a conservation easement program like that it makes sense relative to everything, including individual property rights. What do we do with community gardens? In some sense, there's a kind of crosscut that surfaces much more subtly, not so often in urban agriculture. So out of this comes a kind of a protect the farmland we have, support farmers, connect farms to local markets, and ensure access to healthy food. That's what we thought we heard those documents saying. How would you think about sharpening that? Looking.
Can you use that blue stickies up there? We're going to put them up on the wall.
All right. Well, still a larger percentage than any of the ones we've seen before, feeling like this general focus might be an important one. But even so, several of you are saying, whoa, this is mostly totally, or it is actually, within range, but still could be better. What do you want to say to sharpen this value statement? Yeah, first, somebody. Every hand that's up has been up 5 times already, folks. Somebody new? There you go.
I just would like to see maybe a distinction between rural and urban farming, and just kind of differentiating between the rural and the urban, as there are different circumstances.
But bringing both forward in the statements?
The support farmers is the part that I'm concerned about. I think we should certainly allow farmers to continue to farm. But the subsidies of farms have had a huge impact on the economy, especially in this region with the development of the ethanol subsidy that the government created. It's had a huge impact on farmland, cost of land, cost of grains. Raise the price for everything. So supporting farm.
A clear cautionary
market
tale
would be a nice application.
Qualifying that. The person right behind you. Did I see your hand? Yeah. No? I guess not. In the back? Give us a statement, please.
Okay. My statement is basically what I am aware of is what happens when the protect farmland and support farmers is you may be a farmer who has land and wants to sell but can't. Or you may be a farmer or somebody who would like to make a farm and is not allowed to. So whatever happens here, your rights will be infringed upon, and what you do on your own land will be mandated by these committees that are taking these tests here. Thank you.
Thank you. In the corner. Yes.
Yes, I'd like to see two things. Banning of genetically modified organisms and geoengineering of species of animals and plant life. Because that is ruining our flora and fauna, and it is something that corporations such as Monsanto has pushed down the throats of the American people.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I got to bring attention to it. These questions that are up there.
We had this talk.
This is important.
Is it new information?
This is maybe new information.
Is it what you already said?
Not exactly.
We had this conversation.
There is no way that number 1 or number 2 will not dominate every single slide because of the way that these questions are being asked. And all of the answers and responses here, whether they're good, credible, or indifferent, they're not going to be looked at after we walk out the door.
Sorry, that's not new information, but I will say to you that we are holding up a mirror to precisely the documents that you all have produced so far.
Were these produced
We would be irresponsible not to do that as a start point, and we are inviting challenge, and we're getting it.
And what's irresponsible is the way that this presentation is being made to these folks in this audience today. It is unjust that you use this technique to deliver the message because it is
It's unjust that you're interrupting this to promote your own agenda.
I have no agenda.
If you don't support protecting farmland, why
I
don't you
absolutely
just
do.
say that you don't?
There's
it
no
will
way.
be recorded. That's what we're here for.
I'm here
you
with
either
you.
agree with the statement or you do not.
We all
But
agree.
you're,
We all agree with the statement. There's no way not to agree.
That's right, I am, because I've had to listen through him.
And let me explain one other thing. Let me explain something, folks.
Colleagues, please.
The only people who are criticized in this room are the ones that don't fall into that group. Have you noticed every conversation is about the dialogue of the people who don't agree? That's the design of this program, folks. It is called the Delphi method.
We are
You are being
listening
indoctrinated.
to everyone. They are confirming and questioning. We are getting both
Don't
kinds of
listen to what a
information.
man says. Judge him by the things that he asks. Voltaire. Make your own decisions, folks.
Thank you very much.
And I encourage you to think for yourselves.
Thank you. We do encourage you to think.
Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Need you to tell us our thing.
Thank you very much. Are there other ways to sharpen the farmland discussion?
See,
Again, let them recognize that we are recording these things. Don't say the same thing over and over.
See, my concern is I have 1.5 acres of land. I have my own personal garden. By me raising my own garden, I'm not supporting farmers. Will I be held a criminal for making a garden in my own yard?
Of course not. Of course not.
Oh, it's happened. It's happened in other places.
Judging by the earlier slide you had up, you can phrase it much simpler by saying buy organic, stay out of the farm's way as far as government programs, because government tends to mess things up really bad with unintended consequences, but maybe have a legal defense team when they do get attacked by the FDA and Monsanto and whatever other alphabet agency you want to throw at that. So defend them, do not interfere with them, and that's how I would support them.
Thank you.
I think the statement could be improved upon perhaps by saying support farming or support right to farm at various levels.
Thank you. Other things on farmland?
Included agriculture also.
Say it again. The word agriculture should be part of this text. Thank you.
The topic included agriculture, it's not just farming.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think you should have some ratio analysis as far as the region, as far as the geography, as far as what goes into the municipalities in the counties, so that you have some idea of the...
So this one needs data as well relative to the distribution. That's what the 78% was about in the other piece, but we can go more in depth in that and will. Thank you. You ready for the next one?
I think perhaps farmland could be refined to land that is zoned agricultural.
Land that is zoned agricultural. Excellent. Clarification as well. And then that invites a kind of continuing examination of how zoning practices occur. Thank you. All right. Energy and climate is one of the themes, again, in your documentation. And it has a pretty broad spread, but in that frame, there's an attitude about consumption. There's an issue of Conservation through weatherization, energy efficiency makes sense, adaptive reuse, where are the renewables in this picture? How do we measure our progress in moving forward? This is a relatively recent addition to the planning framework of the region. In trying to summarize the statement, it was conserve, i.e. use less, generate green energy, use more renewables, and reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Those are the themes that come out of this narrative of these plans we've reviewed.
You don't say how to do so. That's the problem.
Well, again, if you have ways to help us sharpen this, please key in and we'll talk about it. Sharpen or redirect. Okay. If you wanted this to say what your values really hold, how does it need to adjust itself? What's not captured in that statement?
Providers of the electricity need to better management, the production, the distribution. Locally here, we see, for example, electric rates going up, and the profiteers gaining more, and we're just paying more of our dollars. Management policies, how we get energy produced.
Excellent. It's very interesting. You're pointing to something very specific, which is you've got this modes of production. The question is, how is it distributed, bought and sold? And again, going back to some concerns about too much government in that, some concerns about not enough government in that. Right here, sir. You'll come around with the mic very quickly.
Geologists have recently found Marcellus shale gas. We have vast reserves of natural gas in the state, in the country, in Pennsylvania. I mean, we could be completely energy efficient. We could be developing cars that run on natural gas. Why, which are clean, and why do we have to use less energy when we have such an abundant supply right here?
In the spirit of redirection, this isn't necessary anymore from your point of view. Is that fair?
In certain aspects, it's not needed, because we could eliminate gasoline engines by turning to natural gas.
Okay. Point of view. Next.
And partly in response to what he just said, if we turn to fracking, we're going to not only be adding to greenhouse gas emissions with the natural gas that would be burned, but we'd also be endangering our water supply. So I totally disagree with fracking as a solution. But also, we need to use less energy, generate green energy, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because it's not whether climate change exists or not. We're in the throes of it. It's already happening. And we need to do everything within our power to slow it down, and we need to do it now. And generating green energy through a clean grid program could produce jobs and move forward.
Thank you. Clear. Again, different points of view. We can respect all of them. In the corner with the lovely white hair.
I think this statement's a little too abstract. I think it might be beneficial to kind of target it toward more specific goals or quantities.
For example, which way would you like to see it go? Okay. Anybody else want in on this one? Right up here in front.
If we're talking about the entire community and all the plans put together, I think every community should be demanding more fair prices. We shouldn't have people in Florida paying a lower rate for electricity than we are in this area.
Excellent. Your observation, and your observation all have at least a component in the distribution question and how best to think about distribution. We've seen a fair amount of you, but you're welcome.
Look at it here. I'm a bit of a scientist myself, and I would redefine greenhouse gases. It turns out anyone that ever took thermodynamics would know CO2 really isn't a greenhouse gas. It's a lagging indicator. However, water vapor is. But getting rid of water vapor is kind of hard. We have lakes and oceans that just evaporate it. So I guess I would eliminate that phrase from the statement, because CO2 is not a greenhouse gas, so it's sold as one, but water vapor is.
More precise physics in the statement, and particularly the objection to greenhouse gas. Anything else from the public? Yes?
I've got a quick one. That, as far as the transition from a consumption economy to and a incentivization of a conservation economy, that you have to get the public involved in the discussion. And I think you're doing a good job, Dr. Bob.
If you have something to say about everything, then
sure
other people don't get their
I
chance.
know, I sure do.
So there's someone who hasn't spoken to us yet. Thank you. Thanks, Steve.
I'd say generate green energy, but it has to be cost effective. You could say solar, wind, and generate all your energy that way, but nobody's going to pay the cost.
Yes. Do the cost to benefit. Thank you. Recorded. All right, all the way in the back.
Just quickly. Invest in geothermal energy.
Invest in geothermal. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Go quickly.
I'd like to see the reduction of RF radio frequency pollution. I'd like to see the elimination of smart meters.
Okay. Now, again, remembering all of these embedded in every one of them, here we are at natural resources. It was interesting to look across all these documents and see how often our respect for our natural resources surfaces. And it's huge. Our concern for our the toxic legacy of some of our industries, the aspiration for a greener infrastructure, the illegal discharge of materials into our waterways and wetlands, the whole idea of repairing and health, all surfaces fairly large within this frame. And then you start scaling into non-point source solutions, the health issues, the way in which we manage our waste and storm water, the water supply itself, the watershed, erosions, flooding, the fish habitat, all of that as a kind of broad cross-section represented in many of the documents we reviewed. It sounded like folks were saying to themselves, we want our water protected, and we want other natural resources to promote, and we want to protect other natural resources to promote a healthy ecology, economy, and community. Now, we wrestled with how to summarize this one a lot, because this is another one of those points in that's connected to everything. And so when we said ecology, economy, and community, it is the way in which many of the plans frame the relationship across issues related to the natural resources. Those of you who are keeping track of our time, we're on 7 of 10 of these. We're just 2 more plus the big one, which is, you're not going to spend money on everything equally. Are some of these things more important than others? And we'll ask that question too, just to get a conversation. You ready? Okay, almost half, and a new voice. Thank you, sir.
Oh, there you are. Thank you. My name is Paul Gramilosiak. I'm a local historian. And our greatest natural resource is the falls. And we call it a natural wonder. I don't know about you, but I wonder how natural it is anymore. When I see skyscrapers going up all around it, and when I see aircraft in the sky all the time in place of the birds, when I hear noisy things going on all the time, or loud rock concerts, when you're coming to see a natural wonder, what are you coming to see? Entertainment or the wonder? So I think we need to focus on restoring Niagara Falls.
Thank you, Paul. Others that want to sharpen this all the way in the back?
well, this could tie together with economic development. The prior destruction of our natural resources creates great opportunity for the federal government to fund the restoration of the damage that's been done. The pollution to the 18-Mile Creek would be a giant job producer for many years, plus the correction of all the combined sewer outflows in this area would have a huge impact on not only natural resources, but the economy by providing jobs. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to correct the mistakes of the past.
There's a kind of restoration economy implicit in what you're describing. It gets a fair amount of play these days. Ben?
Relative to the statement itself, perhaps something like protect, enhance, and restore. And then my second comment is other natural resources really seems to be a catch-all for some very important environmental characteristics, fish and wildlife habitat, very historic and unique ecologies.
All the way in the back, Ben?
Once again, protect our water. This very well could possibly lead to the point where we're not allowed to have access to the water anymore, okay? Protect our water. Define who our is the issue here. As the gentleman, Professor, you were saying in the beginning, we and our, and you're speaking on behalf of this committee that put this together. Okay, so I assume you think you may be on the inside with these committees and forming this. I'm only imagining the way you're speaking. But I'm not sure that that's about us, this protecting our water, because if you look into what happened in Europe, they're not allowed access to their water. When it comes to things like using less energy, well, guess what? They have to turn their lights off by 11 at night, and they can only have their heat up to 65, and they can't have their house, air conditioners can't work in the middle of the day. That's how you conserve energy, according to the Agenda 21 people. Just to let you know.
Thank you.
I might dovetail to what the gentleman just said in the back, but rainwater, water runoff ponds, they're not government property.
Recorded, thank you. All the way in the back?
There needs to be a comment about protecting public health, period. And the way it's worded, it would seem to really encompass anything anyone wants to do. So it does need to be fine-tuned and specific so that there's not such a wide discretion in choosing the economic versus the public health aspect, or trying to blend a risk-based approach to both. And then I'm just adding clarification to my earlier remark. I would not agree with the characterization that referencing one of the highest ranked risked radioactive waste storage sites in the United States is quote-unquote nuanced to that slide. It is at very significant conflict to that slide. So I'd ask you to consider the previous slide a little bit more carefully as well.
So again, the consideration on the slide previous is about the word cloud, and the word cloud is about what the plans currently say. What you're saying is bring public health more strongly to the fore and let that govern such things as, and I assume you're talking about West Valley when you think about that area?
No, I'm talking about the Niagara Falls storage
and
site.
right up the road as well, sure.
And for anyone on the group in this whole planning process in Buffalo, it would be worthwhile to become familiar with some of the Niagara County issues. I apologize, I don't know what a word cloud is, and I don't want to take up any time with any explanations. Really doesn't matter. But bottom line, the way this is worded, someone could pick an economic issue or a public health issue. They could be mutually exclusive and still fit under this particular slide. So it just needs better definition.
Thank you. In the corner here, and then over here.
Yes, with the central planning and the melding of public and private partnerships, I think one of the things that impedes the problem to access to water is allowing companies such as Nestle drain the Great Lakes water, put it into bottles, and send it to China.
Thank you. Yes,
Just to relate to what she said, every community, or whoever's putting a plan together, should decide what actually is a natural resource, and should that be sold for profit? Should it be strictly for public use, or a blend between it? You have to identify that first before you can go on with what we should do with the resources.
So again, given the plans that have been developed, these are things you would nudge and push, and not so subtly in some cases, based on either public health considerations, or in your case, how to balance out what's private interest, what's public interest, relative to a resource like water.
We should respect our water. We have the fresh water here. We should not be selling it to Arizona or protect it, what we have here. And it, like you said, it's part of the ecology, our economy, community. It's a natural resource that we take for granted. You know, with respect to what I've just said, our environment needs to be addressed so we can still have this as fresh water.
Thank you. Don't put a straw in the Great Lakes. It's one of the things I'm
When we talk about protecting our resources, I see a trend going more towards globally giving our resources to the world, such as our military troops and our jobs. And once all our jobs are gone and we don't have the tax base to support our local communities, now we're putting together a plan of how we can develop prosperity from here when we already had prosperity after World War II, and we've seen steady decline of our prosperity go down since World War II because of a lot of the policies that have come to us from on high. So I'm wondering how this whole process is going to,